Okay. Well, thank you guys. I know it's 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, probably a lot of other stuff going on. Brian's actually up at the church because he's got a banquet for LCS that starts at 5. And so, yeah, I know lots going on. And so thanks for doing this. We're recording it so that the guys that can't make it can follow up later. Here's kind of our plan today, and that is we're going to hit some high level stuff. We're going to kind of map out what our time together is going to look like over the next few months in terms of how Brian and I are interacting with you. We're not going to get into the weeds or the specifics too much on Buffalo and collegiate. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but not, you guys probably are going to have some very specific questions. And so we'll get to those, not in this meeting, but soon. We'll explain how that works here in a minute. But we're hoping to be done with our part in about 20 to 25 minutes, maybe 30, and then give some time for Q&A. For you guys, I guess the first thing I would say is give me a thumbs up. And I know some of you aren't on camera, but give me a thumbs up. Has everybody had their first Summit team meeting with your team? Okay, looks like it. I would say if you haven't yet, make that your top priority. I'm hoping that everybody has had at least one. There may be a few of you that have squeezed in two. I'm not sure, but I hope everybody has had at least one, gotten the ball rolling. And that's good. And I forgot to say this at the beginning, but thank you guys so much for co-leading. Brian and I, it means the world to Brian and I. You guys are the culture carriers. You're the DNA carriers of Mountain Men. If it scales, if it grows, it's because of you guys, because otherwise it just can't grow and be what it is. So I should have said that off the top. And so I want to say it. Brian, let's talk about just a couple of these things that I wrote down. We're just going to assume a few things are happening with your teams right now, and we're going to address those real quick, just kind of in bullet form function, because I think it might answer a lot of questions that you would have had at the Q&A at the end. So we can just knock these out. This is most likely what you're dealing with right now. And here's the first one. Maybe some of the guys, I know that some of you have had some dudes drop out on your team. That is pretty common in the first month or so when guys really figure out how much they're going to have to get in shape or what the commitment is to meetings. We usually have one or two, the drop, more than that. We usually, not every team has somebody, but usually lots of teams will have one or two drop out, and that's okay. The way we react to that is we just say, hey, we understand. We hope that it'll work for you another year. This just probably isn't the right time for you. And we don't spend too much time begging guys, no, don't drop out. Now, if you sense by the Holy Spirit that somebody needs to stick with it and you have a relationship with them, sure, push on them, but don't want it more for them than they want it. I would say probably also you've got guys with lots of questions. Lots of specific questions. Well, how far is it to the base camp? And are we going to do Columbia or are we going to do Harvard? And they're feeling that they're going to have security the more information that they know. I would say we're not trying to hide any information, but this is a 5-month process. And so making sure that every single question gets answered, whether it's about the mountain or whether it's about how do you navigate the marsh on Buffalo, or whether it's about what are the tents like or what's the equipment like, we'll get to all that. But I would just say slow roll those guys and remind them about the real reason that we're doing all this. We'll get that information to them. You'll get it all. We'll have more specifics as we get closer, but you're probably dealing with a lot of guys that have a lot of questions. Brian, talk about this next one. You may have some guys that are saying, and Kip's on here. Kip and I talked about this on his first trip. You may have some guys that are like, aren't we going to do more than this? Like, we're really just going to meet once a month and we're not doing like a Bible study and we're not doing like a book. Like, we just really get together and talk and then go to the hill. I thought it would be more than this. Brian, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we're always open to leaning in relationally with more, but I think more for us as leaders looks like a reasonable pace. Maybe it's a one-on-one connection with each person on your team, but we're not trying to shake up the point and purpose, the heart of Mountain Men. You know, we've got a system. Ask your guys to trust the process. Really, this phase is about getting to know everyone's story, getting them in shape, and letting the team start getting to know each other, really around why someone's going to the mountain, typically to take some ground in some area of their life or leave something behind. And so we want that to be the priority. It's not that those other things are bad. And if you've got a unique team that just has more capacity or maybe less responsibility, man, lean into those relationships, have them connect with each other one-on-one. But it's really all a relationship building season. Just Lee and I have to remind ourselves of this every year. We're not the church. We're not, there's plenty of ways for guys to study the Bible or get in a small group or do certain things. This is really a conversional community of men where we're pursuing a relationship with each other so God can work through us, but also a meeting with God, like a true encounter with God while we're on this journey or in Colorado. And so we're just not going to make it about something we're not. You may have a lot of questions and a lot of requests. Guys can file those with Lee and I at the end of the season, and we'll consider it for next year. But man, just run the play and get after it. And you guys know that, but just be confident, kind of tamping that down a bit.
Yeah. Remember that a big piece of Mountain Men from the very beginning was the ask, seek, knock principle from Matthew 7. And one of the reasons, like Brian said, curriculum can be great. We did Fathered by God at church last fall. It was phenomenal. But Mountain Men is meant to allow God to take us where God wants to take us. And sometimes a curriculum kind of will funnel everybody to thinking about the same thing, when Mountain Men is supposed to go on this open-ended encounter with God to allow him to speak to us. It may be not at all what we thought. So that's one of the reasons that we don't latch on to a curriculum with Mountain Men, because we really want guys to go where God is leading them. And we believe the Holy Spirit leads that through your teams. And so that's one of the reasons that we do it that way. Here's another thing. Maybe some of you guys are worried a little bit about the chemistry of your team. You had one meeting and you had one guy that didn't say anything and maybe didn't act like he wanted to be there, and you're like, oh man. Or maybe one guy's talking way too much and you're like, this guy's going to annoy the crap out of me. I am not going to be able to handle this guy, right? That happens. That's typical. See where God is leading you in that, but also we trust you guys to address those things as brothers and in love. But we trust you guys. If there's a guy that's talking too much, man, in a non-threatening way, you could have a conversation with him afterwards. Say, hey, man, I love how much you contribute to this group, but we really want to hear from everybody. So I'm just going to ask you, keep your comments kind of minimal so that we can hear from more people, because there's going to be plenty of time for you to comment. If guys can't handle that, then they shouldn't be on a Mountain Men trip, right? I mean, but then you may have other guys that really they're telling you last minute that, oh, I can't make the meeting, something come up, or they never comment. If you have a thread going and you're a little worried that they're all in, don't be afraid to ask them. Say, hey, I just noticed you hadn't said much. Maybe it's your personality. That's cool. I just wanted to make sure you were with us on this. Is this still something that you really want to do? And without, discouraging someone, I think don't be afraid to address chemistry issues on your team. And if you feel like it's a problem, we'll talk about it. Talk to Brian and I about it whenever we get together. We're going to talk about kind of those ways that we're going to get together. We'll help you navigate that, as well as other guys. When we get together in groups of 8 or 10, other co-leaders can help you navigate that stuff, because we always have situations like that. So don't worry too much about it if you're sensing some chemistry issues.
Hey, Lee, I think the last one is real, kind of with team dynamics that you may be feeling, or we would at least like you to really start thinking about now that we're in April, is what type of shape your guys are in. And so you may have a person on your team, you think, man, there's no way they're making this happen, or they're just way overweight, or they've never done anything like this. Or you might be confident just by looking at your team. You might think they're in great shape and just fine. We all know that the altitude can be very humbling. And when you put, 30, 35, 40 pounds on your back, it's just a game changer. And so now's the time to kind of put a test in front of your team. And we've found one of the best ways to do that is have a team meeting around, or an additional meeting out on the hill or a hill, and kind of set a goal for guys. Don't expect guys to go knock out 20 up and down on that hill, in an hour, their first time out there. But for us males, we're often a little prideful, a little hard-headed. We need kind of a smack in the face to kind of assess where we are. And it's also a good opportunity for you to see where these guys are and know which guys might need a little extra work. You don't want to wait around until June to kind of figure out a guy's not ready. I mean, really, the next couple of weeks around Easter is typically a really good time to test your team and just see kind of where people are. And if a guy goes up and down our classic hill in Tulsa, Clay, I know this doesn't apply to you or maybe a few others on the call, but if he can only go up 8 or 9 times and he throws up, hey, that's going to be a sobering reminder for him that crap, I got a lot of work to do. And so for you, from an assessment standpoint, and for your guys, I would challenge you, like, get them out there as soon as you practically can and just kind of see where everyone stands.
Yep, that's great. That may be some of the places that you are. If we haven't addressed something, you'll have a Q&A time here at the end, but we're going to keep moving through this agenda. Brian, but before we start this kind of conversation about kind of meeting with you and I, let's just do a really fast, high level overview of the collegiate and the Buffalo trips. Do you want to start with one of those?
Yeah, you bet. I'll start with the collegiate peaks.
Okay.
All of our trips are kind of centered around Buena Vista this year. And so we've got a BV Overlook campground there. We've got an arrangement with for the kind of 20 some odd days we're all going to be there, kind of overlapping each other. And we're going to be sending a couple teams to Buffalo, staggered with a couple teams to the collegiate peaks, just off and on all over that 3-week period. And so you won't be on the mountain alone. Your team won't be. There'll be another 1 or 2 teams out there with you and kind of mimicking your schedule. And then, as you're coming off the mountain, teams will be coming on. And so we've got a lot of dynamics going on this year, a lot of extra gear we're purchasing. We're thrilled about it. It's going to be amazing. But specifically with the collegiate trips, I know you guys have heard this, but we just want to offer a brief overview, and then Lee's going to cover this in a minute, but we're going to connect face to face and go through really the details of all these trips here in the next 30 days or so. But on a collegiate trip is going to look a lot like a traditional mountainman trip to the Crestones or to Humboldt or Crestone. And so we're going to drive out. Fortunately, it's a 2-wheel drive trailhead. There's a small parking area there we're going to be able to park at. And on day 1, we're going to hike several miles. I think it's about 3 miles in. It won't be as steep of a climb as we're used to, but it will be taking some elevation. You're going to be camping by water, and you're going to camp 3 nights there. And so you'll camp that first night, you'll have your down day, you'll camp the second night, you'll summit, you'll camp the third night, and then you're going to hike out day 4. And we're going to hike out early that morning, get into Buena Vista, whitewater raft, have dinner, and then day 5, stay in BV Overlook that night 4, and drive home day 5. And so that's just kind of a little snapshot, just so everyone kind of knows what the expectations are around that trip. You can plan accordingly. You can have your guys prepared for 3 nights on the ground, 1 night at BV. The drive time and route will be a little different if you're used to going to the Sangre de Cristos. This is a slightly different area. But it is going to feel a lot like a traditional mountainman trip to the Sangre de Cristos. Lee, you want to cover Buffalo?
I do, yeah. Some of you were on Buffalo trips last year, but let me just give you a high level. We'll drive out, leave early, like we always do, 4 o'clock in the morning. And what's different about Buffalo is we don't get onto the trail that first night. We camp at it's pretty primitive, but it's a campground, an actual state park kind of a campground that's only about a mile from the trailhead. There's nobody that works there permanently, so it's just like some pit toilets and some concrete picnic tables. But you can stay there, and then the next morning we'll have information about what that night will look like at the campground. But the next morning, get up early. You'll drive down to the trailhead. Like I said, it's only a little less than a mile from the campground, and you'll hike out in. You'll hike halfway around the loop that very first day. You want to get an early start because there's no real down day on the Buffalo trip. There's not just an acclimation day. And so you get halfway out on this loop. It is a loop, not an out and back like South Colony or the Collegiates. And so you'll go about halfway out. There's a really good camp area there, lots of flat spots, really nice area that overlooks a meadow. And you'll spend your afternoon there relaxing, spending some time alone, going out on your own. That's kind of your time to be alone with the Lord. And then the next morning, you'll climb. And so some of you will be climbing West Buffalo. I hope a lot of you are shooting for West Buffalo. If you're having injuries, if fitness isn't great, some of you will climb another peak right there, Buffalo Gal Peak. They're both great, good peaks, but West Buffalo is a lot more difficult. And so West Buffalo is harder, I think, a little bit than Humboldt, not nearly as hard as Crestone. So it's kind of in that range of Humboldt, maybe just a little harder for different reasons. And so what you'll do, and this is what we would recommend, I think it's easier. And what we found was most teams wanted to do this, but when you get done summiting that day, you will hike all the way back out instead of doing another night out in the backcountry. Now, we will make the option for some of you. I know Ian Kiefer's team last year was one of the few teams that they went ahead and took that option and spent another night out there. So you will have that option. But most teams said, hey, if we're going to go almost all the way out, then let's just keep going. It was only about another 3.5 miles or 3 miles and some up and down coming out. But they go ahead and come into Buena Vista. So we'll have nights at the campground in Buena Vista for 2 nights for Buffalo teams. So they'll roll in pretty late in the evening, get a quick dinner, showers, go to bed, get up the next morning, have the morning to just relax, go into Buena Vista, which is a cool little mountain town. You could do some souvenir shopping, you could have breakfast, and then right after lunch is about the time you'll start heading over to Whitewater Raft. Then that night is the Mountain Men dinner. That night is the better dinner, and with the wives' letters that come after it. And then the next morning up early to head back to Tulsa. So that's kind of the high level of what those 2 trips look like. And they're both fantastic trips. And the mountains are fantastic mountains in their own right and in their own way. Nobody will be disappointed with that experience. So let's pivot. Again, I know you've got your questions. We'll have time for it. Let's pivot. Brian, let's talk a little bit about this.
Yep.
We want you guys to know this right here is our team. Brian and I don't have a team anymore. It's been a couple of years since we had a team. And so you guys are our team. And you're the ones that are a priority to spend time with. And so doing that, since there's about 50 plus of you, is a little tricky. So here's kind of some of the things that we want to do. First of all, I'll start with this one, Brian, and then I'll let you take it. I hope everybody got in the text the link to mine and Brian's videos that we shot last year about each summit team meeting. I've gotten a lot of good feedback. Hey, that helped. We don't expect you guys to run it exactly like that. We did 5 of those videos for Summit Team 1, 2, 3, for like the meetings that you would have leading up to the trip. But it will give you a kind of a great overview of how to move through the monthly meetings that you have. And so if you haven't gotten that, if you haven't seen that for any reason, please let me know, because I think those will be really helpful. That's one of the ways that we're helping you lead your summit teams. But the others are going to be more hands-on, what we're doing right now. So Brian, why don't you start with that, with the rest of the ones on that list?
Yeah, the other 2 kind of key, well, there's several, actually more than 2. We're intending to do monthly Zoom calls like this. And so we're going to have a touch point available to you to call into these. We'll have kind of regular updates on what's going on, reminders about certain things. We'll record these and send them out to you if you can't make them in person, but would love to have you. And there's not a requirement, but would of course love to have your engagement. Your questions really fuel a lot of these types of calls, what they did last year. And then above and beyond that, the week following Easter, not this coming week, but the week after that, we're going to start doing breakfasts once a week like we did last year. And we'll go every other week, making them available to both the collegiate trips and the Buffalo trips. And we'll be gathering anywhere from 3 to 5 teams worth of co-leaders, kind of circling up early, midweek in the morning. And you'll be able to sign up to those. We'll be texting out the openings for those, and you'll be able to start committing to those. Like I said, the week following Easter through early July. And so every week we'll have time available. We want to hear about what's going on your teams. And honestly, the most beneficial aspect of that last year was you guys interacting with each other. You're in it, you sharpen each other. Everyone brings kind of their personality and their approaches to the table. And it's a great time of learning from each other. And kind of the last thing on development or interaction, Lee and I are working on our schedule for July and August. And our hope and our plan right now is we will be interacting with every single team while you're in Colorado. That may be summiting with you. It may be camping one night with you. It might be whitewater rafting with you. It might be having a dinner on that final night with you guys. But our hope is we get to cross paths with every team this year. And so we're intending to be out there for the entire stretch. I asked Jamie's permission on this, so please don't tell her this yet before I can get that. But we're intending to be out there the entire stretch and just kind of be back and forth in the backcountry and in Buena Vista. We want to climb these collegiate peaks with a few teams just to get that under our belt. And of course, Buffalo is just one of our favorite areas. Lee and I have been going there since we were, gosh, probably 20 or young 20s. It's just it's one of our favorite areas. So yeah, that's kind of our plans and intentions. Of course, you guys can reach out to us anytime. We're talking about and thinking about Mountain Men all the time. We've got a couple hours on our calendar tomorrow that's just dedicated to planning for the future. So everything with BV Overlook set up, all of our whitewater rafting reservations are made. I mean, we're really teed up and ready to go this year. And this is going to be our most impactful year of Mountain Men so far. Yeah. You guys heard this from us before. We've got over 200 men, so many different churches represented. And it's amazing what God's doing. And Lee and I, there's not a big front door to this thing. The men are coming because they see the life change in you and they're being invited by you. And so, man, we're so thankful for you guys and can't wait to see what God does this year.
That's right. There's a chance we may throw in another face-to-face with like all of the Buffalo leaders and all of the collegiate leaders. It'll just be kind of a needs-based situation. But we said it might be good as we get close to the trips to do a big meeting with each sets of groups to really talk about those trips. But we'll just, this is our plan, and then we'll adjust accordingly in terms of if we need more meetings, if we need to do more of this. These Zoom calls, we'll try and keep them brief. Those breakfasts, we'll have a little more time to talk in those. Last thing I want to say before we throw it to Q&A, this is just kind of some housekeeping stuff. One, we purchased, and some of you will remember this, we purchased a online master's class of sorts for wilderness first aid basics. Some of you went through that. That company got bought out by Outside Magazine, and they sent me a thing that just was like a packet. It was like a file folder that had all the documents in it and all the videos in it. So now that's just, you don't have to have a login or anything. So I'm going to make that folder available to you guys. I may have to put it in a Dropbox, or I might do it on our website. I need to talk to Chris Oakes about that. But you'll be getting a link to a file folder, and it's going to have all that in there. I would highly recommend, even if it's just the videos, please go through those. They're not very long. Great base. I mean, Kip, you really need to do this because I know you don't know much about first aid, but if you got Kip on your team, you're in good shape. But it'd be a great base for you as a leader to have a good overview of what good wilderness first aid looks like and how to do it. I'd really like all of you to at least watch all the videos, if not go through all the written material as well. The other thing that we want to let you know is this year, our plan is to not use the Zoleo devices that we got last year, those emergency beacons, and go completely to Garmin. We want to do two things. We want to have waypoints already mapped out for all of our trips, meaning if this is your first time as a co-leader, or if you're going to a new area that you've never been before, you will actually be able to use that GPS to follow a line if you want to. And I'm not saying that most of you will need that, but you'll have it to never get lost, to know exactly the course that you need to take. So we'll all be using Garmin's, and we may even get some newer, nicer Garmin's. But the other reason we're switching to Garmin only is Garmin bought out a big search and rescue company, and they are now offering a special policy for organizations like ours. So this is good news for you and for your teams. No one will have to purchase personal travel search and rescue insurance this year, like we've done in the past. We as Mountain Men are purchasing a large policy through Garmin that will cover all of our clients in their mind, all of our customers and clients. We just have to have their names and they will be covered. So that's kind of a bonus this year. Nobody has to pay that extra $30 or whatever for the search and rescue insurance. Through Garmin, we're going to cover that. Mountain Men is going to cover that cost. And so that's another thing we wanted to let you guys know about. Brian, anything else before we go Q&A?
I think that's it. Covered the highlights. We'll have more coming in future months, but we wanted a touch point, and more than anything, we want to hear what questions you guys have. So just feel free to unmute and just ask away, or ask on the chat. Either way.
Yeah.
Hey, on the Buffalo trip, are we still planning on doing the grill thing for the first night?
I think
having the grill set there.
I think so, Ephraim. That was good. It didn't work as easily maybe as we thought that it might, but I would say right now that's still our plan. We still have both of those really nice grills and we have gas to use, and so our plan is to make that as an option for you guys. But what I found last year was some guys didn't, like Austin's team. They just used the grate that was over the fire to cook their steaks and stuff. So our plan is to use those at this point, but I wish they would have worked better than what they did last time.
One risk we're going to have with those is the way our trips are stacked up, Ephraim. We're going to attempt to lock up two campsites there and keep them the entire time. We'll talk about this at the Buffalo specific meeting, but there's some complexities with that. We can't book the campsite ahead of time, and we can't book it for the entire amount of time. And so we'll be leaving the grills there. And so the question mark for us is, will they be taken on nights we're not there? Will they be destroyed? Will they be thrown away? And so we're going to have, the grills are going to be available, yes, and the first team's going to take them out, but we do have we want to think through some backup plans of being able to cook over an open fire with a grate as well.
Yeah, I'm totally good with cooking.
We lost him.
That was rude. Lee just muted him, man.
That was like quiet.
That's your note that he'll address those at the Buffalo meeting, I guess.
Now I know how you really feel. I'm good either way. I just didn't know if we were going to try to plan on doing that.
Yeah. That's
We'll
a
try.
huge benefit of that night is we can have a non-dehydrated meal.
Yeah. I do love that about that. And we can have ice chests right there in our vehicles, and
Yeah.
might as well make it a good meal. Might as well make it very enjoyable to your team. So, other questions?
Lee, this is
When is
Sean.
Go ahead, Sean.
We've had a couple of our guys ask about fishing in the Collegiate Peaks. Do we know what the status is on that?
We're going to have water, so I assume we'll be able to fish. The problem is Brian and I haven't been there, and Lynn Hall, who is not on the call tonight. He must have had another obligation. So I don't have a good answer to that question yet. But
We know there's not a mountain lake there, and so that will be a big drawback. So it will just be kind of creek fishing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not expecting the fishing to be epic, but I do think it's a possibility if guys want to do it.
Yeah. We'll try and find out more and let all of you know that as we get closer, and as Brian and I just do more research on the area. So somebody else had one.
Hey, Lee, this is Paul.
Yeah.
Hey, one of the suggestions we started doing a couple years ago with our team members, because you guys talked about seeing when guys are in shape or not. We actually started doing our meetings out on the hill.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Spend the first 30 minutes on the hill and then finish up the meeting afterwards. And as a co-leader, that just kind of gives you a way to see how everybody on your team is.
Yeah.
And then,
Great idea, Paul.
pushing
That
them,
way
it's
it's
just-
not a huge
but-
commitment, but you get a taste. That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, you can, 30 minutes in, you can tell if somebody's in shape or not.
Yeah.
And who you got to push on. You
Yeah.
can just keep an eye on it. So, and it's a good talk for the team, good team building too.
Yeah.
So that's just a suggestion I had. So
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. And I know you know this, Paul, because you've been doing it a long time, but as long as you can do that and still, have your full good meeting where guys are really sharing their story, where they came from, where they're going, as long as you can still do that, then I think it's a great idea. Or it's a supplemental meeting. If you got guys that are going, man, I wish we could spend more time together. We should get to know each other. Then go do breakfast after a day on the hill, or spend a little time up there at the top of the hill, just sitting together and talking. So yeah, I love integrating meeting into hill time.
Yes.
That's good.
yeah, we went and just sat on the back of a truck. We pulled up the back of the trucks. And
Yeah,
the back,
it's good.
sat there on the back and did it. So
Cool. Other questions you're feeling right now?
Dean, when do the first groups head out? What are the dates of the first groups going out?
July 26th is the Wednesday that the first trips leave. And they'll come back, whatever that Sunday is, Wednesday to Sunday. And then honestly, our last trips are done like August 13th or 14th, I want to say. And so Brian and I were just talking today with somebody that we've really condensed the Mountain Men season down, even though we have more teams and more people going. We've gotten better at this overlapping thing. And so really the window of trips is pretty small this year, just about 21 days maybe, but we still got 27 or so, 25 or so teams that are functioning within that window. So, but yeah, the 26th of July is the first team that goes. Let me amend that. Sam Wacob and Blake Holmes are doing a climbing trip in Buena Vista. They will go a little bit earlier, but the first Mountain Men teams, the traditional Mountain Men teams, are on July 26th.
Because of the overlap, we are going to have some tent optimization opportunities. And so we don't have those questions answered yet, but it's on the radar to have resolved before July. So at one of our future Zoom calls, we'll let you guys know kind of how we're going to work that out.
What
Lee,
else?
This may be a rookie question here, but have you already gathered from our team who needs bags and who's sleeping in tents, who needs backpacks, all that kind of stuff, sleeping bags?
Great
Yeah,
question.
so I always get my initial numbers from their registration because we asked that on the registration. And then as we get, within about a month of the trip, I will ask you as leaders to confirm that, because what happens is a lot of guys go, man, I'm going to buy a backpack. They need one, but they get excited. And so they go buy one, or they go buy a sleeping bag, which is great. We love that. But I'll get that initial number, but then I'll confirm it with you guys when we're, a month or 3 weeks from your trip leaving.
Perfect. Thanks.
And this year, that might not be me. It might be Brett Reich. It might be Lance Salazar. It might be somebody else that's doing all that gear confirmation. We're trying to delegate and get some help on that. So much appreciated.
Yeah.
What else? Any others? Joel Vacine's on here, and he asked me a question earlier this week, and we're not going to get too much into it, but he was just asking about this marsh on Buffalo. We'll talk about that with your Buffalo teams. What's hard about the marsh is it changes every year. It depends on how much snowfall there's been and how much it's melted, and that'll depend on where the marsh is. If it's big areas or small areas, it's kind of hard to tell from year to year. But when we talk to just your Buffalo teams, we'll give you a good idea of how to manage that, how to handle it, how to keep guys from getting completely soaked or have a miserable trip. We'll talk about that on those Buffalo teams. But I thought that was a good question, Joel, because that's kind of a big, hairy question mark when you're climbing West Buffalo.
Yeah. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah. Well, are we going to be done with this thing at 4:33?
Yeah, I've got one. If nobody
please.
else, this is more of just an ideas on what to do in a situation outside of pulling the dad aside and just having a real quick conversation on encouraging him and trying to give him a little bit more insight on letting his son talk. We've got a father-son duo. The dad is real forward and the son is very quiet, very quiet. And I think the dad's doing a lot of speaking for the kid.
Yeah.
You guys have any past issues similar, anything like that?
Yeah, sure.
That's a great question.
Yeah, Brian, you can comment on this too, but I think your gut instinct, your first instinct was pretty good. I think I would just have a really healthy and non-threatening conversation with the dad and just say, man, it's obviously so easy for you to engage in these meetings. And I love that. I just love that you're willing to talk. But I want to see more out of him, and I want it to come from him and not from your coaching. So, I think as your Mountain Men leader, I think maybe letting him talk first before you talk. Let's let him emerge, and sharing some of these questions. Anything you'd add to that, Brian?
No, that's good. And Austin, this. I mean, I think, do it in private. I mean, it's what you're saying, but I just think, man, you never know how people are going to react. You don't want to humiliate someone in front of their son or other men. And sometimes, our pride gets the best of us and we can get a little defensive. So anything you can do to de-escalate, I mean, over a cup of coffee, over a meal where it doesn't feel like correction. It's just, man, this is honestly how your son's going to grow and how he's going to learn to be a man and also get the most out of this Mountain Men experience. We're here for each other. But man, we need to use our own voice here. So you'll handle that well.
Yeah.
I do think you're smart though, that you're thinking about this now versus letting it compound meeting over meeting. I mean, these things we've just learned when we delay, kind of pray about them, just hope they get resolved. Hey, that's great. But man, just going man to someone and talking about it always is the best.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
You
Hey,
bet.
if I could chime in on that as well.
Yeah.
I would say have a one-on-one with the son too.
Yeah.
Because I could imagine that, I don't know what the ages are, but I can imagine that for a son to open up in front of his dad would be pretty hard, even if his intention is to do that. But just have a one-on-one, just encouraging conversation from just another man to just be vulnerable in front of your dad or something, or dive into that because there may be some reason why he's not.
That's good, Ephraim.
It's real good. I'm glad you said that, Ephraim.
That's
Just
awesome.
to-
Thank you very much.
And just to follow up from what Ephraim said, kind of what we started with is just that same, like these boys, I mean, they're young men, right? And we encourage them in the group setting to say, like, God's going to talk to them just like he talks to us. There's no, we got to relay the message from God to our kids.
Right.
So to just encourage, like, hey, be ready. God's going to speak to you as well. And maybe that gives the kid that encouragement to just, oh, okay, like this isn't a dad thing. This is me directly with God thing. So it just, try to encourage that in the group settings too, so lots of different ways to tackle it for sure.
Yep. And Joel, your son maybe said one of the most powerful things I heard in the mountains last year.
Oh.
One of the last day we were hiking out of Buffalo. Man, there's no joke. God's working through these young men.
Yes, he is.
Yep.
Love that. Thank you, Joel. Anything else before we bug out? Okay, that's the point of these meetings, to be brief, to allow you to ask some questions that are pressing, and then we'll start meeting face-to-face soon after Easter, and we'll get to dive deeper into specific situations with men on your team. We really want to help with that, and actually, we really want to help with that, because it's not just Brian and I. It's actually those kind of comments coming from you guys. This is why you're Mountain Men co-leaders. This is why this brotherhood is unique and special, because of this. So love you guys. I'm super excited about this year, Brian. I know Brian and I both are. And so,
Hey, Lee, I want to pray over these men. Just looking at
love
their
that.
faces, I'm just like, man, I can't believe the quality of men on this call, that
No.
God's calling to do amazing things and to facilitate, healing, hope, restoration for so many men and young men out there. Let me pray over you guys. Dear Father in heaven, thank you so much. What an honor. Even through a computer screen, I've got a sense of your power and holiness. You're moving through these men, and it's way bigger than Mountain Men. You're tapping into their gifts, their abilities. We're on a journey seeking you, Lord, and other men are coming on our teams, and they're responding even to our hunger for you, our asking, seeking, knocking. I just pray over these men. Hey, they're warriors. They're dangerous. And the enemy wants to seek to hurt, to go after guys like this. And Father, I just pray protection over each of them, that they only hear your voice, that they're following you as their great shepherd. And Father, I just thank you for them. Their willingness to give up this time, the emotional energy, the tough conversations that they have to have with other men, the calling out, the accountability. Those things aren't easy. It takes something out of you, Lord. And I just pray for a fresh refreshing from your Holy Spirit in this moment, this week, in this Mountain Men season, over their lives, over their relationships, their families, their marriages, their homes, their businesses. Lord, I just pray, you overwhelm them with your mercy, your grace, and your blessing to everything they put their hands to. Lord, Lee and I are so thankful for them. You're not calling them to Mountain Men or to us. You're calling them to you. We're all seeking after more of you, Lord, and just you want to be found by them, just like Blake said this morning. You're a father that wants to be found. And Father, I just pray that they see, hear, feel your presence, your touch today and this week. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank
All right.
you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Brian, I'll stick on here if you've got anything more that you want to ask, but if not, we're done. I'm gonna shut off the recording.
Appreciate you guys.
See you guys.
See you, brothers.
You guys.
Good one.